Hi, I'm Kathleen, and I'm a 3L law student, a teacher, and an LSAT tutor. I help students, especially those who learn differently, to break down the LSAT into clear, teachable strategies. In today's video, we're going to discuss logical reasoning and how to spot an assumption question in 30 seconds. All right, let's dive in. Why it matters. Okay, assumption, which is a hidden idea that the argument depends on. If you miss it, the reasoning falls apart. Spotting them quickly equals a big score boost. So the assumption is something that the author's argument depends on, but it doesn't say it outright. So it's usually something that our, developed mind just assumes, hence the word assumption, we just automatically believe is part of their argument. But this is an important skill as a future attorney because being able to identify what people are assuming really helps you to understand whether or not the communication's right and whether that's where the problem lies. So, on the LSAT, if the assumption isn't true, the whole argument falls apart. These are important questions. It's an important skill to develop. So that's why it matters. So how are we going to figure this out? Well, we're going to look at the question stem. Phrases that signal that we can identify that what we're dealing with is an assumption question are things like, which of the following is an assumption? That seems fairly obvious to me. The argument depends on which assumption. They're going to get more difficult, don't worry. When you see these phrases in the question stem, it says question step and it should say stem, you know it's an assumption question and the exam is asking you something about what is assumed but not said. Common question stems are, which of the following is an assumption? The argument depends on which of the following. The conclusion presupposes that. So a good study tip is to make flashcards of all the assumption stems you can think of or that you find on practice exams. So if you're studying, a far distance out and you've got lots of time, get yourself flashcards, go through old questions that are available on StubHub. I think I have the link in here for you. But you can go through the old tests. You can either get the old books or get them online through Law Hub. And you can go ahead and write down examples of common question stems that are assumptions. That way you become familiar with them because the faster you see them, then you know what you're looking for, and it makes it, this is an instant question for you to have as a win. So step two, you're going to identify the gap. So what is the gap? So what did the author say and what did the author leave out? That missing piece is the assumption. So find the conclusion. So when we're identifying the gap, we've got the conclusion on one side and we've got the premise on the other. And in between that gap place, that's your assumption. So when you're reading through the argument, you're looking for what's the premise? So what are they saying? This is, and then the conclusion as a result. And whatever it is you're assuming in between, that becomes your assumption, sorry. Find the conclusion. What is the author trying to prove? Two, find the premise. What evidence do they give? And three, spot the gap. What is missing between the premise, not the promise, the premise, the conclusion, that is the assumption. Step three, use the denial test. So negate this answer choice, make it false. So if the argument collapses, it's the assumption. Physically write out the answer choices and cross them off or negatively to see which one makes the argument crumble. Now, you're clearly not going to have time on the test when you do it to do it that way, but when you're practicing these, you certainly can do that. A quick example. So I've got a couple of examples for you. Argument. All lawyers at firm X are skilled writers. Sarah is a lawyer at firm X. Therefore, Sarah is a skilled writer. So the assumption is the part of the answer that if challenged means the argument is false. So the hidden assumption is that Sarah really works at firm X. Maybe Sarah works at firm Y. See where I'm going with this? Common traps. Answers that strengthen but aren't required. So let's just talk about what a trap is for a second. So what you've got, you're going to go to your answer choices. There's 4 of them on each question. You will see 2 that are obviously wrong. You'll be able to cross those ones out right away. Then you will have 2 more. One is a trap and one is the correct answer. So this is where we're kind of narrowing it down. So common answer traps, answers that strengthen but aren't required, or answers that repeat the premise. The correct answer is something the argument needs, but probably wasn't said. So strategy, read the answer out loud. If the argument sounds wrong when an option is denied, that's your assumption. All right, in summary, check the stem for an assumption words, find the gap in the reasoning, apply the denial test, and avoid trap answers. You do not need to predict every assumption perfectly, just find the gap, test the answers, and trust that the correct assumption is the one the argument cannot survive without. All right, what is the assumption? Example 1, argument. All healthy diets include vegetables. Maria's diet is healthy, therefore Maria must eat vegetables. All right, so if we break this down, let's look at the question stem first. The conclusion above depends on which of the following assumptions. And then from our five choices, we have A, Maria enjoys eating vegetables. B, vegetables are the only component of a healthy diet. C, Maria does not exclude vegetables from her diet. D, all diets that include vegetables are healthy. And E, Maria's diet also includes fruits. So when we go through these, we can see, well, Maria's diet also includes fruits, has nothing to do with the question. All diets that include vegetables are healthy doesn't answer the conclusion above depends on. It's not relevant. So we can cross those two out right away. Then Maria enjoys eating vegetables. Well, again, the conclusion above depends on, it says, therefore she must, has nothing to do with enjoyability for her. So we've got it down to vegetables are the only component of a healthy diet, that it is an assumption there, and Maria does not exclude vegetables from her diet. Well, that's in conflict. So vegetables are the only component of a healthy diet. If we look back at the question, we can say all healthy diets include vegetables. Well, it doesn't say it doesn't include other things. Maria's diet is healthy, okay? Therefore, Maria's diet must include vegetables. We can confirm that if we answer the conclusion above depends on which of the following, it does depend that vegetables are the only component of a healthy diet. Now, we're not arguing whether it's right or wrong. We're just looking to analyze the question to give the LSAT the assessment piece they want. So in this case, if we look at the breakdown, it says the argument assumes that Maria's healthy diet actually contains vegetables. If she somehow had a healthy diet without vegetables, the conclusion would collapse, right? It's pretty much exactly what we said. So answer C is correct. And you're just going through, these are your answer choices. This is your question stem, and this is your argument. All right, let's go to the next one. Argument, the local library increased its hours and attendance rose by 20%. Therefore, increasing hours caused the rise in attendance. Question stem, which of the following is an assumption required by the argument? So we have no other changes at the library contributed to higher attendance. People only attended libraries when they're open longer. The library has more books than before. Most of the new attendees live nearby, and attendance will continue to rise in the future. So similarly to example 1, we have some things that just don't apply that we can rule out right away. So answer A, no other changes in the library contributed to higher attendance. That one, the conclusion links increased hours. That's the kind of part that is in our question directly to higher attendance. The assumption is that nothing else explains the rise. Negating A breaks the causal link, right? So no other changes at the library contribute to higher attendance. Well, if there was other changes that attributed to higher attendance, then it wouldn't be accurate. So let's go to our next example. So we have the argument. All of the teachers at Lincoln High have advanced degrees. Miss Chen is a teacher at Lincoln High, therefore Miss Chen has an advanced degree. Question. The conclusion depends on assuming which of the following. So we know it's an assumption. That makes sense, assuming. And so we have Miss Chen teaches only part-time. Well, in the question, it doesn't say anything about full-time teachers. Miss Chen is a teacher at Lincoln High this year. Well, because it's bold, we know that's the right answer, but that's true. What if she wasn't? If we were negating this, you're saying, well, she's not a teacher there. That one would fit, which would make it the right answer. Teachers with advanced degrees are more effective. Again, not related. Lincoln High requires advanced degrees for teachers. Well, it said all of the teachers at Lincoln High have the advanced degrees. Miss Chen prefers, so it's really just repeating something that's already there. Miss Chen prefers teaching at Lincoln High to other schools. Again, not relatable to the question. So answer B is definitely it, because if we negotiated it and removed it, it would not make sense. Breakdown, the conclusion only holds if Miss Jen is currently a teacher at Lincoln High. Without this, she might not fit the stated rule. 100%. So it's B. You see how this works? Assumption questions become very easy once you see what they're looking for. All right, example 4. Company X doubled after it launched a new ad campaign. Therefore, the ad campaign was responsible for the profit increase. Question STEM, which of the following must be assumed? No other factors such, now again, which of the following must be assumed? We know it's an assumption question. A, no other factors such as a new product contributed significant to profits. Seems like a fit. B, the campaign will continue to generate profits next year. Really not relevant. Customers responded positively to the campaign. Okay. Company X had no competition during the campaign, and Company X's employees worked harder during the campaign. So we know it's answer A because if we negotiated that one backwards, it would weaken it. So if we go to the breakdown, it says the conclusion assumes a causal link between the ad campaign and profits. To hold no other factor can be explained the profit increase. Right, exactly. And let's do 5. Last one. Argument. All professional athletes must train daily. Carlos trains daily, therefore Carlos must be a professional athlete. I feel like this is so standard. Which assumption does the argument require? Only professional athletes train daily. Carlos is training to become a professional athlete. Carlos's training routine is effective. Amateur athletes never train daily. Carlos trains with other professional athletes. So immediately we know that we can remove certain ones, like amateur athletes never train daily. That we can cross that one off. And then if we go through Carlos's training to become a professional athlete, well, Carlos is training daily, therefore it doesn't really fit. So we can remove that one. Then we get down to amateur athletes never train daily. Did I already do this one? Carlos trains with other professional athletes. That's kind of irrelevant. So if we go to the breakdown, the reasoning reverses conditional. All pros train daily. If daily training, then pro. The assumption needed is that only professionals train daily. So without this, Carlos could be an amateur who also trains daily, right? So A is the clear answer because in order for this to be accurate, that all professional athletes must train daily, Carlos trains daily, therefore Carlos, in order for that to be accurate, it would have to be true that only professional athletes train daily. If that's not true, then it's not, our argument becomes false, which means that's the correct answer. Only professional athletes train daily. So you're not looking for an accurate answer. You're looking for the answer or the assumption that is needed in order for that answer to be correct. All right. So I teach LSAT question types with drills and strategies and tools and ways to break them down. You can grab your spot in my LSAT prep program through the link in the description. I hope that this tip helped you, and I'd love for you to join me for more. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next LSAT strategy, and check out the free study notes and resources that I've put together for you. The links are in our description.